everyone to today's webinar hosted by the ICC on the topic of making engaging presentations. I'm Elinor Hase, and I'm trying to moderate for this session, although I don't think it's really necessary. We are excited to have Silke Riegler, a business communication and intercultural trainer, as our guest speaker. Silke will share with us an easy-to-follow checklist that supports your business clients in the preparation stage of their presentations. This checklist reflects a pragmatic 9-step process that ensures your client's success. The key to an engaging presentation lies in meticulous preparation, and we are looking forward to hearing Silke's insights and knowledge on this topic. After her talk, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask Silke questions you may have. Thank you for your participation, and let's give a warm welcome to Silke. Silke, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Thank you very much for inviting me to this ICC webinar. I'm honored to be here tonight in Germany. It's 5 p.m. in Germany. And I would like to welcome all of you to share one of my favorite topics with you. My idea today is to give you an insight into how I teach presentation, or how I do presentation trainings with my clients. My talk will probably only be about 30 minutes because I want us to have enough time to engage. I want us to have enough time to have questions that I'm happy to answer, but I don't really see myself as the absolute expert here. We're all experts in our fields. We have experience, some have more, others have less, but I'm very sure that everyone can share some experience when it comes to teaching presentations, to giving presentations, and the topic in general. So for me, this is really more about sharing what we have than me telling you what you can do. So before I start my presentation, I have a question for you that I would like you to think about, and also write the answers to my questions in the chat, or you can also, I'm sure you can unmute yourself and turn on your camera, and you can, of course, also talk. I have 2 questions for you. When you think about presentations that you have attended in the past, over the last 2 years, many presentations were online, but we have more and more face-to-face presentations again. We had them also in the past. Try to remember presentations you have been to, and think about presentations that you thought were successful, where the presenter, the speaker, could get the message across and you took something away from the presentation. Think about what, in your opinion, what made this presentation successful? What did the speaker do to make the message stick? And on the other end, I want you to think about a presentation in the past that you have been to that you thought was not successful, where you went, you had high expectations, you had high hopes to learn something, and by the end of the presentation, you took nothing away from it. Again, think about what happened. Why do you think this presentation was not successful? So give my 2 questions some thought. I will also copy paste them into the chat, and I would please ask you to give me your answers. What makes a presentation successful in your opinion? What is the challenge if a presentation is not successful, and why do presentations fail? Think about my questions for a moment. I'll post them in the chat. Give me your answers in the chat, or open your mic and tell us. maybe if this is a bit challenging at the moment, try to think of the last presentation you've been to, the last webinar you've been to. What did you like about it? What made it good? What made it effective? Or maybe the last presentation or webinar you've been to, you were not so happy. So think about that. Why did this presentation fail? Again, you can type in the chat, or you can open your mic and you can just tell us. Yeah, Michelle, humor. Yeah. If a presenter can use humor to get the message across, it's very, very good. It's also very challenging, but a very good technique. Filmer, you mentioned good presentation. They use both text and photos in each slide. Absolutely, the slides are very, very important. Too much text can be a problem. Not enough text can also be a challenge. Yes, Ross, I couldn't agree more. Successful presenters don't sound like they're reading from a script. Very, very important. The delivery is very, very important. I often find when I go to presentations, I know that the presenter is an expert in her field. However, often they lack presentation skills. And it's really, really a shame because I know the person knows things, but if she cannot get it across because there's a lack of presentation skills, that's really, really a shame. Okay, you all have really, really good ideas. Thank you so much for that. I'm reading what's in the chat. Yes, you need to be well prepared for questions in the end. I couldn't agree more. Often when I go through presentation training agendas, I notice that the Q&A section at the end is not part of the training, but it's really, really important. Very often you get the best information from your audience in the Q&A part, which is at the end and technically after the presentation. Yes, and Irina, what you mentioned at the very end also is something I will speak about in a moment. Of course, you need to appeal to students or your audience's experience and emotions. This is sometimes not so easy if you don't know them well yet, but then you have to find out. It's your responsibility to find out. And yes, again, the very last comment at the moment, monotonously presented, make soporific presentations, making your audience fall asleep. The delivery, again, is very, very important. A person can be an expert, but if she doesn't know how to deliver the expertise, it's really, really a shame. Okay, thank you very much for this. Before I start my presentation, before I start my talk, I would like to tell you a little bit how this came about. Eleanor mentioned that I'm going to present a checklist in a moment. I work in a business context. I have a lot of business clients. And this talk today and also the checklist is actually inspired by my clients because they come to me and they need support for their presentations. They don't have any time to prepare because they're super, super busy professionals, but they can see that in order for their presentation to be effective, they need to prepare. So this is a little bit of a catch-22. They don't have the time to prepare, but preparation is important. So eventually, a few years ago, I came up with a very, very pragmatic checklist, a checklist that guides my clients through 9 simple steps that if they go through these steps, I can almost guarantee that their presentations will be effective. This checklist is what I'm going to present to you today. And it's also one part of a 10-hour presentation training I sell to my clients. So in a way, it's really the heart of my presentation training. And I'm very happy to share it with you today. Okay, so the title of my talk today is Engaging Presentations Check, or How to Have More Time for Coffee. because that's really the idea. If your clients and if yourself, if you follow my checklist, you will see that you have a lot of time for many, many things, and you don't have to worry about the presentation anymore. As I mentioned, this checklist I'm going to present to you is part of my presentation training that I sell to my clients. What you can see on my screen now is roughly the agenda I guide my clients through. And as you can see, there are many, many topics. They're all important. Some of you mentioned also when I ask you what makes a presentation effective. So you can see, for example, in number 6, you can see the delivery. In number 4, you can see the slides, all very, very important parts of a training. To me, one of the most important parts, however, is the simple steps you need to take when preparing a presentation. That is the checklist, and that is what I'm going to speak about today. So there are 9 steps that I want my clients to go through, and the first step is this one. Decide on a topic. It sounds easy, it sounds simple. However, my experience is that this already is the first challenge for my clients. They turn to me and they say, Silke, I have this presentation next week that I need to give. I need your help. And I say, yeah, sure. My first question always is, so what's the topic of your presentation? And very often they give me very general topics. Like, for example, well, my boss said I need to speak about the latest progress on the project. It's very, very general. In order to prepare an effective presentation, you need to narrow down the topic. You need to make it specific. And on top of all of that, I always ask my clients to visualize things because it helps them with the thinking process. So I tell them, decide on a topic, be very specific. We discuss this goes back and forth. And I always tell them, write it down. Write down your topic, have it in front of you. So of course, I try to walk the talk. And in preparation for this talk, I also used my checklist. So my topic for today, my step 1 was the checklist for presentation preparation. And of course, I wrote it down, as you can see. Step number 2, again, is a step that is easily overlooked, but very, very important. Step number 2 is about you. Step number 2 is about the audience. Always investigate, who am I presenting to? What is important for this person? What is important for this group? It's really, really important, again, for the effectiveness of a presentation to know who you're talking to. And of course, again, I ask my clients to write it down. So when I prepared for this talk today, I have to admit, this was a bit difficult for me since I am not very much involved into the ICC. I didn't really know my audience, so I researched a little bit. In 2021, I had the honor to give a webinar during an ICC conference. So I had a little bit of an idea. So this is what I wrote down. Looking at who am I presenting to tonight or today. For me, it's tonight. For some of you, it's not evening yet. I figured I might have some experienced business English trainers here. Or maybe teachers new to business English, could be on both ends. I'm assuming that also I might have people in here tonight who are not so much on the teaching end, but who are interested in improving their own presentation skills. And of course, they can also learn and benefit from my checklist. Or I have people who had nothing better to do today and just didn't know what else to do. You never know. This can happen as well. So thinking about what is important for this group I'm talking to today, or for this person, I thought, okay, I'm sure some of my people in the audience, they want to learn something they can sell to their clients. Many of us are freelance business English trainers. We need good material that we can sell to our clients. I also thought that maybe some people in here, they want reassurance. They want to listen to me, listen to my tips, and just be assured by me and the audience later on in the Q&A that they have been doing the right thing. They've been preparing in the right direction all these years. And obviously, this is also very, very important for my teacher trainings or for any webinar that I do, or also webinars that I attend myself, is that I thought, what's important for you all? I'm sure you want to walk away with something useful that you can use immediately. And this is really what this checklist is about. Okay, so step 2, all set. Step 3 is another step that very often I spend a long time with my clients to discuss. It's about deciding on an aim for your presentation. What do you want to achieve? Why do you speak? What is your aim exactly? You want to be specific. By the end of your talk or after your talk, when you reflect on what you did, or when your client reflects on what she did, she needs to have an idea as to where did I want to go and did I reach that? For this, it's important at the beginning, before you start with your content, to write down your aim, to really think about it, and to not, again, make this very generic, but to be very, very specific. So I typically give my clients a sentence I want them to complete. By the end of my talk, I want my audience to, depending on what it is. So for my talk today, I said, again, I want my audience to walk away with something useful they can use immediately. Also, I want you all, my audience, to see the benefit of a checklist for presentation preparation. I find this immensely useful. And of course, I hope that by the end of today, you agree with me. Also, I want you to agree with me that teaching presentation skills is easy. It really is. It's not rocket science. It takes some thinking, it takes some planning, but it's not that difficult. Obviously, I hope that by the end of my talk, you are glad that you came. Okay, step 3. Step 4 is about the content of the presentation. And as you can see here, we're going through a 9-step process. And it is not until step 4 that I really want my clients to brainstorm the content of the presentation. And again, I give them guiding questions. I want them to think about exactly what they want to talk about. And I want them to make sure that the content supports their aims and that the content is targeted at the audience. Another keyword comes in here, and that's the word benefits, because I want my client to really focus on whatever they tell their audience. What's the benefit? What can they take away from this information? These questions, again, they seem like easy, obvious, no-brainer questions. My experience is quite the opposite. My clients are experts in their field, just like we are. We're experts in what we do. And this is great, but this is also sometimes a problem, because in a presentation slot that we're given, we try to show our expertise, or we tend to try to show our expertise by telling our audience everything we know. However, very often this is too much. We are experts in our field. This is why we're invited to give the talk. We don't need to prove it. We need to really, really slim it down. We need to think about, what's my topic? Why was I invited? What is my aim? What do I want to get out of this for my audience? Who is my audience? And again, what are the benefits? So really, really important, but not so easy questions. Again, as you can see, I always ask my clients to write things down. Personally, I'm a huge fan of Post-its. As you know, you can also do digital Post-its, because it makes sorting the content easier in the next step. So again, going back to my preparation for this talk here today, step 4 was easy because it's my 9-step checklist. That's my content for today's talk. So that wasn't so difficult for me. Okay, but again, for our clients, also our students at university, I not only teach in a business context, but I also teach at universities, and my university students also find it very, very difficult to prepare good presentations. Okay, so moving on to step 5. Depending on the level of the student, and depending again also on the aims of the presentation and on the audience, I work with my clients on vocabulary. Again, only if necessary. Sometimes it's not even necessary, but if it's necessary, this is the time to look at the vocabulary, because by then you know about the topics, you know about the content, you know about the audience. You can feed in some content vocabulary here if you have to. I didn't need to do this. I think I was fine with vocabulary, so there's no post-it here. In step number 6, you complete the business presentation structure introduced during the training. So in step number 2 in my training, or in part number 2, I introduce a business, I introduce a structure. I'll show you in a moment. And this is the step that takes the most thinking, because you take, you take the content from step number 4, which typically is a lot of really, really good stuff, but you need to slim it down. You need to slim down the content from number 4. Always cross-check. Does this topic, do I reach my aim when I speak about it? Is there a benefit for the audience? So you need to cross-check with aims and benefits. And remember, step 4 is the brainstorming. There's no order in which you're going to speak about all these things. The order comes in handy in step 6. So in step 6, very pragmatically, you complete your business presentation structure with the content that you decide you're going to speak about. And typically my clients notice that in step 6, they will even delete some topics from step 4 because they realize it's still too much. I have been focused. The topics, they support my aim, and it's all about the benefit for my audience, but it's still too much. So you need to consider this as well. So again, real quick, this is my agenda that I use for my presentation training. In the second part of my training, I speak about the structure of a presentation. There are many, many different structures. I typically like to go with a very classic one. There needs to be an opening, depending on how much time my clients have. It's typically 2 or 3 main parts, and then there's a closing. Strong opening, strong closing, 2 or 3 main parts. And as you can see from the presentation structure slide, for every main part, again, I want them to think about the benefits. So why should you speak about this topic? What is the benefit for your audience? It's maybe an interesting topic, it's a nice to have, but if there's no takeaway for the audience, don't speak about it. And trust me, this step 6 is a very, very intense step with my clients and myself. When I guide them through this and I keep asking them, why should you speak about this? Why? Does this support your aim? Is this interesting for your audience? So we go through this quite a bit, very, very intense, but very useful, because by the end of step 6, typically they have a very nice structure and they have good content for every part of the presentation. Okay, step number 7 is about the visual. So notice here, I'm not talking about visuals until almost the end of the preparation process. In this step, we speak about what makes a visual a good visual, and I also challenged my clients and asked them, do you really need a visual? Because we not always need PowerPoint or any other visual. But again, as for the steps for preparing a presentation, the visuals really comes towards the end. So almost done. Step number 8 is practice. And of course, this is a step my clients don't really like. They say, I don't have the time to do this. I don't want to do this. There's all sorts of things. We all know that we cannot learn a skill without practice. We need to practice, we need to fail, we need to fall flat on our faces, we need to get back up, we need to get feedback, and then get back on track. So I really encourage my clients to not only practice with me, but to find some other person every now and then to present, and then to get feedback. I call this a dry run, which basically it is. So when I get them to do that and they get the feedback, in step 9, the final step, I ask them to adjust their presentation according to the feedback from the dry run. Depending on how much time they have, they can go back to step 8 into another dry run, get feedback from someone else or from the same person. Again, go back to step 9, adjust the presentation, and that's it. They're finished. Okay, so that's it. 9 very pragmatic steps. When my clients go through them with me, they learn how to apply the steps. And eventually, I give them this. So this is just a screenshot of my checklist. You will get all my material later. But as you can see, I literally give them a checklist that they can print out, have next to them on their desk, and they can tick off the steps they have accomplished. It can be a very rewarding thing for some people. I'm a list person, so I like to cross things off my list. It works well for me. I know it doesn't work well for everyone, but for my clients, this very pragmatic checklist has really helped them, or does help them, to be focused, to the point when they prepare their presentations at work. So engaging presentations, check. What can I say? Let's go and have some coffee. So this was my content. I do have some questions for you that I would really like you to discuss, again, in the chat, or you can open your mic if you like. And after this, I'm very happy to answer all your questions as well, obviously. Okay, so again, I have some questions for you I want you to think about. I'm very curious to learn what is your experience with using checklists in your trainings. I use checklists for my presentation trainings, but I also use checklists for other topics. So I'm very curious to hear about the experience here. Also, I'm very interested in your thoughts about what are the benefits for your clients. Can you see this working for your clients? Can you see this working for your students? We all have different teaching contexts. I'm based in Germany, so it works very well for my German clients. Many of them come from an R&D, a technical background, but of course, this doesn't work for everyone. So I'm very curious to understand, how do you think this could work in your teaching context, the country that you're based in, the clients that you have, the students? What are the benefits that you see? Also, of course, I'm curious to understand from your end, what are potential challenges? Do you like it, or do you see challenges? Do you see, things that maybe won't go so well? Again, in your context. And I'm really curious to learn from all of you if you have used checklists for other training topics, and of course, if so, which ones? Thank you, Vicky, for your comment. Okay, let's see. Let's get all of you on my screen. Sandra, you raised your hand. You can open your mic and you can just comment.
Yeah, my name is Sandra. I'm based in Ecuador, and I'm an English teacher. I prepare the class and I structure what I have to do, but I don't have a checklist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also for the training, or a checklist that may be useful also for the student, right? So I find it a very good idea that in my case, what I do when I have these students that they have, for example, a presentations, what they want to do is to practice the presentation because they feel so insecure about their English level, or if they are going to be understood or not. So they need to practice. That's the main issue. And then I check the presentation and I give some feedback, but they basically hire me to speak with me and to present it to me before they actually have to do it, right? But I find it really good to transfer this checklist to the student, to say, okay, when you write, I also find it could be helpful when they have to write essays, for example.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
you're absolutely right. Yes. Yes. Sandra, I would like to pick up on one thing that you said. Your students come to you because they want to practice presentations. And that, of course, is really, really important. This is step 8 on my checklist. The more practice they get, the more feedback they get from you, the better. I find with a checklist like this, it's also easier for us to give our students and clients feedback, because they not only need language feedback, of course they need language feedback, they need feedback on their English, but presentation skills is a communication skill. And I find that almost it's more important to give them feedback on their presentation skills. So is there really, can I really see an aim here? Can I see the benefits? Can I identify a message in what students say? This is really, really important to get to make a presentation effective. Language skills are important. I don't want to say that they're not important, but I find in my business context is I have business clients whose level of English is really, really good, but their presentation skills are, well, not very good. And with that, they don't get the message across because it's a lack of presentation skills. I have business clients whose level of English is actually not so great, but they go through the presentation training with me and the presentations are super, super effective because they know how presentations work. They learn how to deliver. They learn what's important to get a message across. And for that, again, the checklist and the practice is really, really useful. Thank you very much, Sandra. Are there any other questions or thoughts or comments? Again, I'm very curious about your experience. Have you used checklists? Can you see the benefit of a checklist? Can you see yourself using my checklist in your training? Yeah, Vicky, I just read your comment in the chat. I would say for many of us, checklists are very normal in proofreading process. Absolutely, that's one other area where I use checklists too. I give them to my students as well, and I use them, and it's very systematic and very easy to use checklists for proofreading as well. Absolutely. Okay, so HN Nishra, I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing, but you raised your hand. What is your question, please, or your comment? Nishra, can you hear me? If you're speaking, you're on mute. I cannot hear you. Yes, and Fillmore, thank you very much for your comment in the chat. I agree. Checklists help us not to forget a step in the preparation stage. Absolutely. And this is what my clients really like, because they have a tool they can fall back on and basically just take out, go through the steps, take them off the list, and they know if I've gone through all the steps, I have a very good chance of my presentation being effective. Absolutely. Are there any other thoughts or comments? Do you see any challenges in using a checklist? Do you maybe work in a context where this is probably not a good idea because your clients probably wouldn't like it so much? Yeah, Vicky, I just read your comment in the chat. The hardest part is implementing the feedback. Do you mean the feedback in step 8, the feedback on the dry run? Or what exactly what kind of feedback do you mean? What are your thoughts here? Yes, on the dry run, absolutely. That is not so easy. However, I find if you have gone through the steps, you can give the client or the student specifically feedback about like the aim. Do you think you have reached the aim? What is the aim? Why did you speak about this topic? What's your audience? What's the benefit for the audience? So again, you can use the steps in the checklist to give feedback. But I agree, giving feedback always, I also find not an easy task, because you know your client has put a lot of work into the presentation in this case, and you really want to be careful. However, if a presentation goes well, you can also give very, very good encouraging feedback and commenting on what was done well. Sandra, you had your hand raised just now. Do you have another question?
Yes, this is something I'm curious about. What is more convenient when you have a presentation like now, right? A Zoom presentation. I try to be close to the camera so students can see my face, but I don't know what is better. I see you stand up.
Like I do, yes.
Like if you were in a normal classroom situation, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think it's better, or is up to the present? I don't know. It's up to the person who presents.
I think, Sandra, this is a very individual question. I find it very important when I present online that I do stand up, because it gives us as presenters more possibilities to also use our body language. And as you know, a lot of the message is delivered not with our words, but with our body. And if I were to stand really, I cannot go any further because I would drop down something here. But if you're too far away, obviously it's also not a good thing. But I find if in the end, Sandra, you are my audience here. You can decide for yourself if my setup here has worked for you. You can see half of me. You don't see, I'm not very close to the camera with my face, and trust me, you don't want me so close to the camera. But for me, this works. But in the end, Sandra, I think you need to decide this for yourself, and you can try this out yourself as well. I'm not sure if there's a right or wrong. I would just make sure that I'm not too far away from the camera, that people can see most of you. Okay, and I'm looking at the chat here at the moment. Yes, formal body language is important, and that's the reason why I am standing up. It's more dynamic, absolutely. Is there right or wrong? I don't know. To me, the delivery part of a presentation is also very, very important. It's part of my presentation training. Again, because I know everyone I work with, they are experts. but if they don't know how to deliver, how to get their message across, and part of it is the delivery, it's really a shame. So we work a lot on delivery, and I find this is much more challenging online than it is in a face-to-face situation. Okay, I'm just reading the last comment in the chat. AM, I'm not sure what your name is. I'm really sorry. I'm happy to read that you're taking something away from this. I don't know about certificates. This is something that that I'm assuming Eleanor would be able to tell you about.
Yeah, we on demand, we will issue a certificate of attendance.
Okay, super. So Russ, I'm reading in the chat at the moment what you wrote. I'm very sorry, I missed your question above.
Yeah, perhaps it's easier if I explain.
That would be really, really nice.
Well,
I'd be happy to answer, but I didn't read it.
My question above concerned steps 2 and 3. And step 2 is who is this for? Or who's the audience?
The audience, yeah.
And I'm assessing students who are making presentations. They're studying for degrees and bachelor degrees in business administration. I'm concerned that what their answer to question 2 will be, who is this? Who's the audience? You, my professor, will be the answer to that. And then question 3, what's the aim? I think the answer to that one will be, the aim is to pass the assignment. Does that have and that then leads to my second point in the chat that you've just seen, which is, do you present these aspects differently to students making presentations at school and to business people presenting to clients? And further to that, should I perhaps be designing my presentation assessments in such a way that they really simulate a business situation?
Yes, the answer that I would give here is yes, absolutely, Russ. Thank you very much for your questions. As I mentioned, I also do presentation trainings with my students, and I always give them a realistic potential business scenario, because this is what we are preparing them for. At university, I see my job is to prepare my students for the real world. So for their presentations, I give them business scenarios. I'll tell them, you work in the, whatever the topic of the course is, I just give you one scenario. I teach one very general business English course. We go through literally everything. So I give them, for example, the task, imagine you work in the marketing department of a company. You have to present an idea for a new marketing campaign to your CEO. So it's very clear who the audience is, the CEO in that case. The aim is also very clear. You want the CEO to say yes to your marketing campaign. You want the CEO to give you the budget that you need to do the campaign. You want the CEO to also give you all the manpower you need. And with this in mind, they go through a rather realistic scenario that can come up at some point in the real world once they're out of the university and they have a job. And I find this really, really important. Yes, students in the end, they are writing to me, or they're not writing, they're talking to me as their lecturer, and I give them the grade, and they want to pass the exam and things. I mean, that is clear. But the value in practicing at university is to be, in my opinion anyways, is to be put into realistic business scenarios. So I always set them up, because otherwise I find, but again, this is my personal opinion here, there's almost no point in doing this because it's not realistic. Of course, in the end, they speak to me. Of course, in the end, they want a good grade and pass the course. But for the benefit of learning for the future and the real world, I always give them business scenarios. Boris, does this answer your question?
Yes, thank you for that.
Okay, you're welcome. Yes, and Fillmore, I'm just reading your comment in the chat. Absolutely. Any assignment I give my students in class at university is always aimed at what's happening out in the real world. Again, this is the way I see my role is, again, to make my teaching at university as realistic as possible, to prepare them as much as possible for the real world. And this is, I think, why we do this, or why we should do this anyways. Okay, let me share my screen again one more time. Obviously, I would really like to connect with you all. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Just in the search engine, add my name. There's only one me, there's no other. You can, of course, send me an email at silke.riegler@t-online.de. And of course, you can download my slides, you can download my checklist here by either scanning the QR code now or by copy pasting the link into your browser. And both possibilities will direct you to my Dropbox. And in my Dropbox, you can find 2 PDF files, my slides and my checklist. I'm assuming that the ICC, Eleanor, you will also be able to share this. This is recorded as well. So I guess there's many possibilities.
Yeah, the session is recorded and you can see it very soon on our website.
Okay, very good. Are there any other questions that anyone has or comments you would like to make? Anything else I can answer today?
No? No more questions?
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Silke. That was extremely interesting. And it's for me as interesting and important as for all the others who were with you. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise and for being here today in a webinar of the ICC. And a big thank to all of you for joining us and for being quite active in the Q&A session. Please make sure to visit our website and check out the upcoming webinars, such as the one on 23rd February, the Council of Europe's new CFR CV, Old and Familiar or Interesting News, with Dr. Rudi Kammerer and Judith Mader, which will be discussing the new CFR CV framework. We hope you will continue to support and participate in our future webinars. Additionally, I would like to remind you that the ICC journal is published 3 times a year, and we are currently calling for papers. And for those who are interested in teacher training, the next Eurota online teacher training course will start on 4th March. Once again, thank you for your participation, and you, Silke, thank you very much for a very interesting webinar.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Thank you very much for having me, for inviting me. And thank you very much to all my participants for being so active in the chat and asking all those questions.
Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye from
Thank
Guadeloupe.
you,
Thanks very
Eleanor.
much.
Bye.